we're here talking about how to find your next corporate recruiting job in the next 8 weeks. If you're looking for a new job in the new year, part of the Great Resignation or otherwise, go ahead and raise your hand. Would love to just see how many of you are out there. And so as you do that, look, I want to come straight at looking to provide you a ton of value on this call. And then we're going to give you an offer that hopefully you can't refuse as we look into the new year. So that as you look into what it is that you want for 2022, that hopefully we have something that we can give you to help you get closer to either achieving those next career goals or maybe your career dreams. And so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Corey here. He's going to go through with the introductions, and I'll pipe in when necessary. Corey, over to you.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for taking the time. I really am appreciative. I know there's Monday Night Football going on. There's a lot of other things. You could be spending time with your family or doing some last minute Christmas shopping. So really do appreciate it. So yeah, and now just to make sure everyone's in the right place, this is for a corporate recruiting job, not like a military recruiting job. I think that one gets confused with all the time. This is not for the folks who will be trying to enlist people into the military, although that is also a really great job and probably very similar skill set as to what corporate recruiters do as well. But we will be talking about corporate recruiting jobs today. So depending on where you joined us from, some of you may be familiar with our background, some of you maybe not. I'm Corey Hiramoto. I am a recruiter during the day, and I also have a career coaching business all under the CareerShakers.com umbrella. I myself was not a recruiter before I made this career switch about 4 years ago. Maybe some of you have heard this story, but I had a job that I liked in the beginning. I thought it was great. It was my first job out of college. I was getting paid very well. I was getting good performance reviews, getting nice raises. And then about a couple of years in, I realized that I'm not actually happy with my job and I feel like I should be doing something else, but I wasn't quite sure exactly what to do. I just knew that I didn't like my job and I wanted to do something else. And I kind of actually stumbled into recruiting as a career path. It wasn't something I thought of. I was actually against becoming a recruiter for multiple different reasons, all of which turned out to be false. False stereotypes or false assumptions as to why I would hate this job. Originally, I actually wanted to quit and go to like nursing school. I wanted to be able to help people. And then I saw blood for the first time, my own blood, and I almost fainted. And then I realized nursing is probably not going to work for me. And so I was trying to figure out what other jobs I could do where I could help people. And one of my friends actually recommended recruiting, just because you wouldn't necessarily be helping people with their health, but you would be helping advise them on their careers, helping them choose where to go next, what types of jobs they could accept. Maybe they have a bad boss and you help them go to a better company, or their company is failing and they're going to lose their job, or then you can bring them to another more successful company. There's many ways you can have impact on people's careers. And that's what actually got me really interested in becoming a recruiter. So I made that career switch about 4 years ago, and then other people ended up asking me how I made that career switch. And then once I was able to coach a few other people to do the same, I realized, hey, maybe I'm pretty good at this. And that's when the CareerShakers.com was built. We are a full service career coaching business, but what I really specialize in is career switches and career changes. And I've basically culminated all of the things that I've done with my clients and then packaged it up into an 8-week bootcamp, which we will talk about later on. But that's my background. And Albert, you can probably do a better introduction of yourself than I can. So I'll kick it over to you.
Absolutely. So thank you. My name is Albert of the aptly named Albert's List. We're a job search community located here in the San Francisco Bay Area, but also have brought on ourselves during the COVID-19 pandemic. Our Facebook group has 46,200 people in it. We're focused on helping you become laser focused and helping you find that next job, connecting with recruiters, connecting with hiring managers, and really shortening your job search. I know a lot of you are probably thinking, I don't want to do this for 3 to 6 months. And I'm here to tell you that you don't have to do it for 3 to 6 months, and that with the right skills and with the right mindset and with the right frameworks, you can develop a lot of the things that you need in under 8 weeks and get your next opportunity. And we've been running this community for the last 8 years. This is not what I do day by day. I am a content writer and a marketer at a technology company called Oracle here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And Albert's List is something I do entirely on the side and a little business that are growing over here. And I'm passionate about your success because I want you to be able to land that next job, move forward with your life, and do what you got to do to support your family, support your lifestyle, and so much more. And so for those of you who are joining because you want to do recruiting, you've come to the right place, or if you're just curious to learn more. We'll go from there. Back to you, Corey.
Yeah, thank you. And someone in the chat asked, what was the job that I had before I did my career switch? So I was a management consultant before. I had an accounting and finance degree, so I was doing finance and accounting consulting, like ERP implementations, process improvements, and things like that. And then I switched over to be a corporate recruiter. So I had almost no recruiting experience when I did this. So all of you may be thinking, yeah, that's great, but have you actually done that before? So yes, I have. This is actually these are testimonials from my website, CareerShakers.com. I've helped someone transition from HR to marketing, from finance to operations. Marketing is like a really popular career switch topic for a lot of folks that I've coached, but software subscription to marketing. And then of course, I've helped other people break into recruiting as well and follow a very similar career path as me, not from management consulting, but from other functions. And so I definitely have helped other people change careers successfully before. It's not always in one move though. I will caveat and say that. My goal is to help you change careers without having to go back to college, meaning not having to go back and get a master's degree, go get an MBA, or basically spend more money than you need to. A lot of the corporate jobs are highly accessible if you get the right jobs that build the right skill sets that are transferable that can help you make career switches or career changes quite easily. But given my overall expertise in recruiting and how often I've helped people change into recruiting, that's why I'm starting with this bootcamp right now, because I can talk a lot about my experience and I've also done it a few times before. So let me click this button. So what are we going to cover today? So we're going to talk about why recruiting may be or may not be the right career for you. And there's many different types of recruiting jobs. There's many different opportunities in recruiting. So first we'll answer that question for you, because maybe some of you are just curious to see if recruiting is even something you would consider as a job. And then we're going to talk about, okay, marketing says this, Corey says this, Alberta says that. Can we really get a job in recruiting without any experience? The answer, spoiler, is yes. And then, okay, how would we actually do that in 8 weeks? So I'll give you a high level breakdown about what we're going to cover in our 8-week bootcamp, which will be hopefully kicking off, I believe, at the end of January next year. And then you can see if it is possible, how it's possible, and what you would get to learn over an 8-week period working with Albert and I. And of course, we'll have Q&A at the end, but I'll also be checking the chat as much as possible. So feel free to chime in there if you feel like I'm not going to answer your questions within these 3 topics. Why would someone want to work in corporate recruiting? And this is what I was thinking, honestly, when I was changing careers. I didn't have a positive impression of recruiters. I had some really bad recruiters when I was trying to get my first job, and I was like never even considering this career to begin with. And then as I talked to more and more people, when I found out what they actually did for a living, that's when my mind kind of changed a little bit. So and this screenshot I took last week, because I built this presentation last week. But as you can see here, if you just search for recruiting jobs in the United States, there's 337,000 recruiting jobs. Now, I'm sure not all of them are still active. Some of them may be older posts, et cetera, but you can see that there is a huge demand right now for recruiters in general. And if you think about it, the timing makes a lot of sense, because at 2020, companies, were facing COVID. There was a global pandemic, global shutdown. They weren't sure if they were going to be growing, by how much. Are they going to have to cut costs? But now that everything is opening back up, there's vaccinations, there's booster shots, the COVID rates have significantly decreased globally. Things are opening back up. Companies are hiring again. And it makes a lot of sense, because you're going to need recruiters to help fill your other jobs so that you can rebuild or grow and expand. Some industries have done extremely well during the pandemic. So there is a huge demand right now for recruiters in general. Now, one of the great things that I like about recruiting is that it's a really good transitionary role that has very low barriers to entry. So if you were to start as a recruiter, you obviously could transition into other parts or other jobs within HR. So compensation, benefits, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And a lot of HR business partners start their career in recruiting as well. So if you wanted to be a CHRO one day or a head of HR, a lot of those folks have started their careers in recruiting. I personally have seen folks move into program management roles because there are a lot of recruiting processes, recruiting programs that you actually have to manage when you're working at a larger company. That could be DEI focused, diversity, equity, and inclusion focused. That could be compensation focused, or it could just be running recruiting programs in general, like for a campus or for early career individuals, right? And then there's a lot of transitionary skills between recruiting and sales. I've seen people at my company transfer both ways. I've seen people in recruiting go over to sales, and I've seen people in sales come over to recruiting. And then data analytics. This one surprises a lot of people, but I don't think people realize how much data recruiting and HR functions use on a daily basis, right? Some of the data that we look at and we have to build dashboards for, right, is like how many applicants, obviously, but pass-through rates. Are people getting bottlenecked in certain parts of the interview process? What's the DEI data look like? What does compensation data look like for certain roles in each geography? Are we competitive? Are we sending out enough offers? Are we going to be able to hire enough people by the end of the year? A lot of these dashboards use huge amounts of data, more than you can even put into an Excel spreadsheet. So that's why a lot of my recruiting managers actually have to get trained in like SQL. And a lot of them know how to use data visualization tools, right? Like Power BI or Tableau. And so I've actually seen people move from recruiting roles into data analyst roles as well. So it's a highly flexible career, which is why I love it. And personally, I do think you get to impact a lot of people's individual lives. Some of my favorite work stories are from people that I've met and hired into my company. And some of them have found jobs that they absolutely love. Some of them have made a lot of money by joining a certain company at a right point in time. I actually just had lunch with one of the women that I hired. She was actually able to have a child thanks to our company's benefits, which were not available at the company she used to work for prior to this. And so I really love the personal impact that I was able to have. But even if you find out recruiting is not an ending career for you, there's a lot of transferable skills and a lot of other jobs you can take instead. Now, this last bullet here, as if everything I said already isn't enticing enough for you, is around compensation, right? And I never advise anyone to take a job just because of money. I think that's the worst reason to accept a job. I think you should actually like what you're doing, and it should make you happy and fulfilled. But if you wanted a little bit of a cherry on top, so according to Glassdoor, and I actually think this is a little bit low, but according to Glassdoor, here in the Bay Area, if you have 0 years of experience and you are a recruiter, the average salary is $77,000, which is not bad, not bad at all. I can tell you that when I took my first job as a recruiter in-house, I was making more than 6 figures. And again, I had zero years of recruiting experience. And so becoming a recruiter or being a recruiter can also be quite lucrative, even though I do not think that should be your primary reason for becoming one. So those are just some of the higher level reasons why I think it's something that anyone should consider doing if you don't like your current job today. So that was high level why I think you should be a recruiter. I'm sure there's lots of other reasons too, and I'm happy to talk through some of those misconceptions people may have, right? Like, I don't think you need to be an extrovert in order to be successful. You don't have to be a people person. Honestly, some of the best recruiters I know are introverts because they get really efficient with their time because they don't want to waste their time talking to people because that's exhausting for them. And they actually end up being more productive, more efficient. They have more hires, and people love to work with them the most. So what are some example recruiting jobs? So obviously there's the recruiter job, right, as implied, but there's a lot of other careers that you can consider. So there's the recruiting coordinator role. So the recruiting coordinator's job is to facilitate and manage all of the interviews that are being held for a certain company. So that's scheduling interviews, you're working with executives, you're working with executive admins, you're working with travel companies when there wasn't a pandemic, right? People would have to fly in for interviews. You'd have to help with expenses. You'd have to book travel, book hotels, all those other things. And it's also very customer service and client service related. So your job is to make sure that all of these interviews go smoothly and all candidates have a really awesome experience with your company so that they will want to work there. I know a lot of people who've interviewed at certain companies here in the Bay, and they just had a horrible experience with their interviews that they didn't even want to accept the job, even though they got it. And so it's a very important role. Sourcing. Now, this is not a very, I would say, widely known role, but it is a very critical role. So a sourcer's job is to go out and find talent or find candidates that would be really good fits for whatever job it is that they need to fill. So it's actually a very data focused role. I think if you are more on the introverted side and you would prefer not to be on phone calls all day, the sourcing role pays very similar to a recruiter, but also is a very good fit. So you'd be on LinkedIn a lot. You'd be working on making sure that all of our job postings are well advertised, getting the right amount of information. You'd also be a diversity, equity, and inclusion champion. Your job would be to make sure that we have enough of a diversified candidate portfolio that are entering our pipeline. You would also have to be a market expert. So you would be doing a lot of market research. You would be doing talent maps. You'd be understanding where the best companies are to hire from, what it takes to hire each individual, what are the pros and the cons of working at all the different companies. Your job is to stir up interest for existing jobs that we have. And then, of course, there's the recruiter job. So I've listed two of them here. One is for an agency, and the other is for in-house or like a corporate job. And I'll explain what both those differences are. So an agency, there are recruiting agencies that are very popular that their job is to hire people for other companies. So they don't hire them for their own company, but they hire them for other companies. Really popular companies are like Aerotech, Randstad, Robert Half, Adecco, um, Tech Systems. Those are some really popular ones. And so as a recruiter who works at a recruiting agency, you would actually be paid on a sales plan. So you'd be paid on a commission. And so if you are a really good recruiter, you actually could make more money working at an agency than you could in-house. And recruiting agencies are structured very similar to marketing agencies or sales functions. And so if you were interested in sales, but you can't find a job that but you can't find a product that you're excited about selling, I honestly recommend working for an agency. It pays very, very well if you can hire enough candidates, and it's sometimes a little bit easier to sell a career than it is to sell a product. Now, recruiting in-house, this is what I do. So I'm employed by a company and I hire exclusively for that company. That's my job. Then we have recruiting operations. So what they do is they make sure that recruiting functions can actually operate from a daily basis. So they would be helping either choose or select or set up their ATS system. They'd be helping set up all the processes that it takes for an offer to get approved or to put together an offer letter for a candidate. They would help manage the onboarding and set that up, right? How do we do background checks? How do we ensure all of the equipment gets sent to a certain address so that employees can start working, right? And their role also is very data focused. And recruiting operations typically is more process or program management. So a lot of folks who are interested in moving into program management roles will typically come from a recruiting operations background. And then we have the campus recruiter. For those of you who went to college or university, you may have interacted with the campus recruiter. Their job is to come on campuses, stir up interest, build up brand awareness for their companies, and hire either fresh undergraduates or like MBA or master's students, which is obviously a huge and important pipeline for any company. But campus recruiters actually are more events based. So if you are thinking about being an event planner, or you like planning events, or you like hosting parties, and you like the energy and environment of being on college campuses, and you like to travel because campus recruiters travel a lot, that would be a really great job for you, especially if you love events. And then lastly, there is executive recruiting. Of all of these, this one definitely has the highest barrier to entry, but as it implies, your job would be to hire executives, and you could do that in-house or in an agency. Not often do they take people without any recruiting experience, but it is possible. I have met a few folks who have gotten directly into executive recruiting depending on your background. So those are all like the high level jobs that one could get in recruiting. Feel free to ping in the chat if anyone has any questions about any of these jobs, and I'll be happy to answer them. But that's high level. What are some example jobs that someone can get to break into recruiting? All right, so those are the jobs. But what would I actually be doing, Corey? Like, what does my day-to-day look like as a recruiter? So this is obviously a highly simplified version of it, but it captures almost all the activities from that you would basically be doing. So a hiring manager would come to you, or a person that needs to hire somebody, and they would tell you what they need to hire, who they need to hire, how many people, where they're going to be working, right? Are they going to be working in the Bay Area? Are they fully remote, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have to write a job description and then post it up for them. So that could be on your company's website, that can be on Indeed and Monster, LinkedIn, et cetera. And then you're also going to need to find candidates. So you're going to go on LinkedIn, you're going to go on GitHub, you're going to go to Albert's job listings and referrals, and you're going to find really qualified candidates, and you're going to need to convince them to come and work for your company or for this person, right? And then you're going to need to set up some type of screening or interviewing process. So what questions do you need to ask them to determine if they're qualified or determine if they are a very good candidate for this role? What are some interview questions that your hiring manager needs to be asking these candidates to make sure that they have all the skills that they need to be hired, right? Because essentially your success as a recruiter, it will be dictated on the success of the people that you hire. Because even if you hire a lot of people, if they suck and they get fired right away, then they would not think that you are a very good recruiter, right? So you need to make sure that you are assessing candidates fairly and also making sure that you're hiring the best ones. And then you're going to have to negotiate. So for those of you who like to haggle, or those of you who have a sales background, I think you're really going to enjoy this process the most, where you're going to need to figure out what really drives people, right? What motivates people? What is it going to take for them to accept an offer at your company over another company? What are they really interested in their career? This is where I get the most joy, because I get to learn a lot about a person's personal life as well as career goals, and then helping them determine if a certain job is right for them and their career. Most of the time, I do think it is my company, but some of the time it's not the right fit, and that's okay, right? Because I'd much rather hire somebody who likes their job and will stay in the long run and do well, as opposed to hire someone who hates their job, doesn't like it, is a poor performer, gets let go, or just quits, because that's not going to make me look good as a recruiter either. Right. And then, of course, there's the onboarding piece. So you're going to need to make sure that these people that you hire are set up for success. And especially with COVID, it became a lot more complicated because people weren't coming into the office anymore. So making sure that they get their laptops on time, if they need immigration support, transferring an H-1B or a visa, things like that. How are they going to acclimate into their new teams? How is their manager going to be set up for success? If they're going to work for a new manager, how do you make sure that they're going to want to work for this manager and stay at the company in the long run? Those are all of the different high level activities that you would potentially do. Now, some of these are obviously separate jobs in themselves, and some of them are all encompassed by a recruiter. So screening prospects, right? Step 3, or I should say step 4, that's like a recruiting coordinator's role. Let's see, step 1 and 2 is like recruiting operations. And step 7. So you can see even some of these are their own individual roles because they are so important, and there's a high volume of these types of activities at any size company. And depending on what you're interested in or what you like to do, I truly feel like there's a part of the recruiting job or the recruiting responsibilities that will scratch that itch for you. If you're a data person, you're going to need to be pulling your recruitment data, showing people that you are a good recruiter, that you're moving candidates through the pipeline, where there's bottlenecks, how you're alleviating those bottlenecks. If you're a process-based person, you're going to need to figure out how to make your job or your team's job more efficient so you guys can hire more people in a given year. If you're a people person like me, then you're going to love being on the phone with people, trying to understand what motivates them. How are they going to advance their career? How can you help them in their career overall? How can you help them be in a better place with your job than they would be in their job? If you're in sales and you like negotiating, then you're going to love helping close candidates and figure out how they can accept your offer. Great question from Deborah. Is a recruiter an HR manager as well? Typically, at most companies, they are separate functions or separate jobs, but there are some companies at startups where HR managers or HR personnel will be doing recruiting. And that's why a lot of recruiters will transition into HR manager, HR business partner type roles later on, because you get a lot of that same overlapping experience. But recruiting is more focused on what I would say front end HR. So that's about hiring the talent and bringing them into the company. HR focuses on that, but they also focus on the middle and the back end of the, I would say, employee life cycle. So the retention part, right? Like, how do you make sure that they're happy? How do you set up their teams for success? How do you set up their org design plan? How does the performance review process work? How does compensation packages get structured? What's the compensation philosophy and the strategy? That's more in the middle. And then the back end, unfortunately, sometimes is the messier side of HR, which is, how do you terminate employees? How do you discipline employees? How do you handle employee grievances or sexual harassment, discrimination, those types of things? That's also where HR would need to be involved. And in these two middle pieces, the middle and the end, recruiting is typically not involved in those places. Yes, Lynn, you're a people person too, helping other people. Yeah. And if you think about it, people spend more time at work than they do even with their families. So the impact you can have on a person's life is pretty significant. I think they say like 58 or 59% of a person's waking life is spent at work. So why not help them find a job that they like? I think a realistic understanding of the company culture is crucial with assisting and hiring employees. I've worked at prior jobs with the culture of the company. It was not what the HR represented. Do you cover this aspect? So there may be some ethical decisions that you will have to deal with as a recruiter. And we will probably be covering this towards the later end of our boot camp. But that will have to done, I would say, politically correct, especially if you're early on in your recruiting career. There were some jobs where I was not comfortable hiring for them or representing them in the way that they wanted me to. And I did speak up against it. And my manager actually allowed me not to recruit for those certain positions. So you will be faced with those ethical dilemmas from time to time. But knowing how to address them in the appropriate way that's business focused will usually allow you to get the best result. So that's why I think recruiting is a great career. And if you're convinced, I'm so happy. I'm excited. But you may be skeptical, right? Like, I don't know, Corey, this all sounds like you need experience to do this. This all sounds very complicated with all these words and terminologies that you're throwing out at me. I don't think I can do it. Well, I'm here to tell you that you can. And I've helped other people do it as well, so I know that you can do it. But if you need more convincing, let's look at this, right? Recruiting, in my opinion, has a very low barrier to entry as opposed to something like software engineering or hardware engineering or product management, all things which require a typical type of degree or some level of experience before, right? And this is a great example here. So this is a technical recruiting role for Amazon, which is a fantastic company. Their stock price is off the, is so high. They pay very, very well. This is like one of the top employers that you can work for. And if you look at a recruiting job for them, right? If you look at what I highlighted here, they require as a minimum qualification a bachelor's degree or equivalent experience. So what that basically means is if you don't have a bachelor's degree, you just need to have 4 years of work experience. That would basically count as your bachelor's degree. So a company like Amazon is saying to be a recruiter at their company, you don't even need a bachelor's degree. You just need to have 4 years of work experience instead of a bachelor's degree, and you can come and work there for one of the top employers that pays very, very well, mind you, right? That's insane. Like if you wanted to be a product manager or you wanted to get into marketing or you wanted to get into any other job, they would require usually at least a bachelor's degree, sometimes a master's degree, or even a PhD. But here in recruiting, it's bachelor's degree or 4 years of work experience. Okay, but for those of you who are detail oriented, you probably are reading this and are going, okay, Corey, but Amazon also says that you need 3+ years of recruiting experience in order to be qualified for this role. And so I don't have that, Corey, so I can't get this job. Well, let me show you this job description. So this is for a technical recruiter at Tech Systems, which is a recruiting agency, one of the most popular ones. And if you look at their job description for what they look for in a technical recruiter is, look at that. You need a bachelor's or 2 to 3 years of professional service industry experience, or if you served in the military, that would count in lieu of your bachelor's degree. And look, you just need to have an interest in working in a performance-based environment, comfortable doing outbound calls. You need to have enthusiasm. I feel like everybody has enthusiasm, right? That's an easy one. And look, you need to know how to hustle. You need to have tenacity and determination. Look at that. To be a technical recruiter at Tech Systems, you don't even need to have any recruiting experience. Nowhere on here does it say that it's a requirement. It's extra points if you have sales or recruiting experience here down at the bottom. It's extra points, but it's not a requirement to be a technical recruiter at Tech Systems. Look at that. Yeah, exactly, Albert. Exactly. And if you look at here, I don't know how, I don't know where LinkedIn gets this data from, but it does say 55K a year to 75K a year LinkedIn estimate for compensation at Tech Systems, right? And look, you don't even need any recruiting experience to get paid that. Zero recruiting experience. And I can tell you, I interviewed at this company. They're very open to a multitude of different backgrounds. And I met a few of the people at the San Jose office for this company. One of them was a bank teller for Bank of America, and then they became a recruiter. Another person worked for, I believe it was Louis Vuitton in one of our malls over here. Um, they were a sales associate selling Louis bags, and then another person I believe was like a car salesman. I think they worked at like BMW or Honda, and then they became a recruiter. So I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. It is not a mandatory requirement. All right, but now you're thinking, yeah, that sounds good, Corey, but like I didn't work at a bank. I didn't sell cars. I didn't work at Louis Vuitton. Okay, all right. I hear you and I understand. So let me alleviate those concerns. So this is a recruiting coordinator position at Aurora, which I believe is a startup here in San Francisco. So if you look at their mandatory or minimum or required qualifications, they don't even have anything listed around sales experience or military experience, right? You just need to be highly organized, exceptional attention to detail. Everybody can do that, right? Strong initiative and resourcefulness. Everybody's got that, right? Great interpersonal skills, customer service. We smile and nod, boys. We smile and nod. Everyone can do that, right? So there is a job here in recruiting for almost everybody. I know I take that back. For everybody. There is a job in recruiting for everybody, regardless of your background, regardless of your experience, regardless of what you're doing now. There is a job somewhere in recruiting right now where you are qualified. And as an FYI, recruiting coordinators at most tech companies here, you will make around $65,000 in the Bay Area. And to just drive my point home even more. So these are jobs that I personally have seen and coached and advised people to take or do, or maybe you already have done this, that would allow you to easily transition into a recruiting role. And I broke it down for you by position here. Now, I'm not saying that you have to do this in order to get this position, but these are other jobs that I have seen transfer very well over into a recruiting position. And a lot of these are very attainable, even without a college degree or any experience at all. To be a recruiting coordinator, you just need to show that you are able to provide great customer service and to handle competing deadlines and work under pressure. That's basically the main skills that you need to have. So front desk work, admin assistant work, front office staff, right? Executive assistants, all make great recruiting coordinators. Research coordinators, that's a very popular role. Content analysts, companies like Facebook and Google and Amazon hire a lot of those folks. I've seen people transition into recruiting coordinator roles from there. Real estate agents. I met a real estate agent who became a recruiter. I even met a lawyer who became a recruiter after passing the bar and going to law school. Campus recruiting. So this is actually a really easy role to transition into if your company has a campus recruiting function. Almost anyone at the company, most of the time, you can volunteer to be a campus recruiter and get your experience that way. As long as you are personable and you like traveling and you like planning events, very, very attainable. Event planners also make very good campus recruiters. Teachers, surprisingly, I've met a lot of teachers, public school teachers who have become campus recruiters. And then for a recruiting role, a lot of sales focused positions, right? Retail, as I mentioned, MLM stands for multi-level marketing. So that's like an Amway or like a Melaleuca or Herbalife. All translate over well. If you've sold insurance before, that works perfectly for working in a recruiting agency. Anyone who's worked in a sales focused role at a bank or dealership, real estate, etc. And I did mention, or I wanted to mention the flexibility and transferability between all these roles too, right? So I have seen a lot of recruiting coordinators become sourcers, become recruiters, become campus recruiters. As you get one recruiting job, it builds your skill set, and then you can become another type of recruiter if that job doesn't interest you in the long run. So a lot of these jobs, very, very attainable. A lot of these jobs transfer perfectly over into recruiting roles. And I've seen and coached people with my own two eyes who have done these jobs to get these jobs in recruiting. Okay, clearly everybody is super convinced at this point in time. Or just thinking over their questions right now. All right, so all this sounds really good, Corey, but what's the plan? How are we going to do this in 8 weeks, in 2 months? How are we going to do this? I've got it laid out for you. We've got most of the curriculum figured out already. This is things that I've done in order to make this career switch, and also what I've helped other people do to basically do this career switch as well. And now it's a formalized curriculum where I'll be coaching you once a week for 8 weeks, giving you the skills, tools, and knowledge that you need to make this career switch. So weeks 1 through 3, we're going to be focusing on the recruiting fundamentals. I'm basically going to need to teach you what recruiters do. What's all the terminology? What are the things you need to know so that when you go into an interview or when you're writing your resume or when you're writing your LinkedIn, how can you sound and talk like a recruiter so that people will hire you, right? And also, you're going to need to learn what they do on a day-to-day basis. And you're going to learn for yourself firsthand if it's a job that you would actually enjoy. Because what I've talked about so far, I'm sure sounds great in theory, but until you're pushing the keys, you're clicking the buttons, you're talking on the phone with people, you won't really know if it's something that you're going to love in the long run. And even if you don't like it in the long run, that's okay, because as I mentioned before, there's a lot of other jobs that you can transition into once you start here. So that's week 1 through 3. I'm going to teach you basically the fundamentals of being a recruiter, help you talk the talk, essentially, what you need to do. And then we're going to figure out, okay, given your background and experience, which of the recruiting jobs that I've covered so far is one that you want to target? What's the job that you want to get so that you can break into the recruiting field? Weeks 4 through 6, that's where we're going to actually start helping you with your job search. So creating or updating your resume for this career switch, updating your LinkedIn so you can start to get contacted by these companies who are looking for recruiters, which right now, I think someone in the chat posted it's like 500 something thousand jobs now. So companies are in dire need of a recruiter or recruiters right now. And then interview prep. So if you start to get calls back from some of these companies for your recruiting roles, how are you going to present yourself in these interviews? How are you going to be able to pass these interview questions? How are you going to be able to convince them that you have the transferable skills and the knowledge to actually do this job and be good at it? I had to go through probably 5 different companies of interviews, getting rejected in the beginning, just so I could figure out, okay, how do I talk about my experience? What are the actual skills that they care about that would make me qualified and a good fit for a recruiting position? I got rejected 5 or 6 times in the beginning. I had to work on my narrative, my elevator pitch, figure out what projects or examples that, from my past experience, that I should be talking about that would actually be relevant for these roles so that I can start to get job offers. So it took me quite a while to figure out what is a good story, what is a bad story, how do you actually convince them to hire you. And luckily, you don't have to worry about any of that because I've figured it out now. I know exactly what it is that you need to be talking about. I know how you need to address certain concerns that they may have about your potential background. And trust me, if you're in the interview already, they think that you can do it. They want to hire you. If they didn't think you could be a recruiter, they wouldn't have spent the time or the hour, the 2 hours, the 3 hours to interview you. They would have just told you, nah, sorry, you're not a fit. But if you're there interviewing, they think that you can do the job, and all you need to do is convince them that you can. And we're going to help you do that. And then week 7 through 8, that's when hopefully we're going to start to talk about how are you going to be negotiating these jobs? How are you going to pick which job or which company you should work for if you're getting multiple offers? And how is that going to fit into your overall career plan, right? Maybe your end all goal is not to stay in recruiting forever, and that's okay. I understand. Maybe you want to get into marketing, you want to get into sales, you want to get into program management, right? How can you take a recruiting job that you're hopefully going to get, and then how can you build out your career plan so that you can ultimately get to where it is that you want to be? That's what we're going to help you with towards the end of our sessions. So if you package all of this stuff up, you're going to basically have all the tools, knowledge, and information you have, plus access to me and Albert for your questions over these 8 weeks. You're going to get over 8+ hours of training, all of which are all of these materials I have already used and trained other people with, but in a less organized, chaotic fashion. And all of it does work. So that's what the 8-week camp or plan will look like. And we're planning on starting on Monday, January 31st, I believe. And then we're going to have weekly sessions where we're going to go through all of this content, the material. You're going to have homework assignments. You're going to have action items and things to do. And then you will have access to me for questions. Sundar says, 1, how is the career growth in this field? Well, it depends on what you want to do, but career growth is, I mean, it's like every other job function, right? You can go as high as you want. One of the cool things I like about recruiting too is that there are terminal levels, if that makes sense. It's not like a up or out model or an up or out mentality. So there are a lot of folks who progress to like a senior recruiter level, but they don't want to become a manager because it's more stressful, or they just like recruiting and they like talking to people all day, and they would much prefer that than becoming a manager and worrying about other responsibilities and things like that. So a lot of people will stay as senior level recruiters. And if you wanted to stay an individual contributor, you could do that, or you could go into executive recruiting instead, which is also very, very lucrative and pays well. So if you wanted to stay as an IC, there's that job path. And then if you wanted to progress up the traditional like recruiting ladder, there's recruiter, senior recruiter, recruiting manager, senior manager, director, senior director. There's head of recruiting, head of talent for a lot of companies, and then a lot of those folks transition into HR roles, because typically that's like from like a head of staffing, then you would move into like CHRO, head of HR type position. I actually have a former director of recruiting who used to manage me, and she is now a VP of HR. So the career growth is pretty much whatever you want it to be, however high you want to go, or however you want to stay at a certain level. What would you say is the starting pay with no or very little experience? Well, according to Glassdoor, $77,000 is what a recruiter would make here in the Bay Area. I myself, when I got my job, I was making above six figures as a recruiter in the Bay Area, and I had 0 years of recruiting experience. Will recruiting job help understand the industry, especially if you want to switch into a technical role like UI, UX, or software engineering? So you will understand the industry. You will understand, job markets, trends, talent maps, what companies, what skill sets map to what jobs, what companies are good fits at other companies, where you're going to be recruiting from, strengths and weaknesses of each university, of each boot camp. You're going to be very familiar with the market. Will that mean you will be qualified for a highly technical role like machine learning or becoming a software engineer? No, because the skill set is totally different, right? What you do as a recruiter is nothing close to what you would do as a software engineer. So you would still need to go to a boot camp. You would still need to, learn computer science. You would still need to learn Java. You would still need to learn all these different things because there is no overlap in skill set between those two jobs. Right. So we can move into the Q&A section here because I'm reading through the chat. How quickly the pay goes up? I think if it's a question, how quickly does the pay go up? It goes up, I mean, pretty steadily, I would say. I've seen significant increases year over year since I've started working here. I actually make more now than what I did in my prior career, which a lot of people find to be surprising. But the pay is quite lucrative. Yes, I mean, you can look up on Glassdoor like how much a senior technical recruiter would make at a company like Apple. I think you'd be very surprised at what that number comes back with. There is no delineation between salary and commission bonuses with that $77,000 average. Yeah, so I would say if you're at like a recruiting agency, at a recruiting agency, you're mostly paid in a mixture of like salary and commissions. Some recruiting agencies are full commissions, in which you could make significantly more than the average. But I would say that is about right. When I was interviewing there, I think they estimated like your total pay for the year at a recruiting agency to be like 65 or 70,000, assuming you just hit your targeting numbers that you were supposed to. And then if you were to leave the agency and go work in-house for another corporation or a company, those typically start at above six figures. There's a lot of these questions that are around pay, and I just want to reemphasize my point though. I don't think you should be a recruiter if you're only doing it for the money, because it is a very, I would say, energy intensive job. I wouldn't say it's like a time consuming job. I don't think you work like 80, 100 hours a week, but it is very energy consuming because if you think about it, right, you're playing with people's jobs, their careers, how they make money. So it can be very stressful if you're doing it for the wrong reasons. If you're doing it to help people, or you love doing certain skills, right? Like negotiating, research, data analysis, things like that, then it is very fun and enjoyable. But if you're just doing it because you want to make a certain amount of money, I think you will burn out pretty quickly. I guess, Albert, should we answer the pricing question and then we can go back to Q&A?
Yeah, so why don't we show you our offer today? So, obviously many of you have stayed here till the end. I'm about to drop a page here into an Eventbrite page here into the chat. Corey, can you click on it and let's take a look. So what we're offering you today here is, in addition to all the value that Corey just dropped here on how to get you to that next recruiting role, is a bootcamp that we're launching on January 31st. Now, I know January 31st is a long time from now, but we want to give you the time to really think about it. And we want to give you the time to ask us any questions, as many of you are. And January 31st is the ideal time because as the new year begins, Companies are going to get back from the holiday vacation break. They're going to start thinking about what they want their 2022 to look like. And they're going to take a month or so to put together their budgets. And by the time they put their budgets together in early February, you're going to be on your job search. And so this is where that timing comes from. Now, obviously, we want to be able to help you, and we also want you to put some skin in the game when it comes to joining us for this recruiting bootcamp. And so we're giving a special introductory price today for you to be able to join us in this bootcamp of $119. $119, if you think about it, over 8 weeks is just a shade under $15 per week per session, which when it comes down to it, when it comes to a career coaching session, is actually very, very affordable in terms of the group coaching that you're going to be engaging in. And Corey, scroll down a little bit. You're gonna get all the things that Corey mentioned, including one-on-one time with us. You're going to get personal branding. You're going to get the ability to get your resume edited. Corey and I also host Monday night mock interviews. And so I don't know that they'll be Monday night, given that we're going to be doing this in the same time slot. So they may end up moving to Wednesday or Thursday or so. But we'll still be doing mock interviews. And we're going to get you that customized job search checklist. And so you don't have to pay today, but you have a month to think about it. You have actually a month and 11 days to think about it between now and then. But we do have a limited number of $119 tickets. And once we run out, the price is going to go up to $149. Keep scrolling down to the bottom, Corey. So just to give you an idea, the committed dates that we have are down here below. So Corey scrolls down to the very bottom. We're going to start on January 31st and end on March 21st, with sessions on February 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th, March 7th, and March 14th. And if you're interested, because we do give you a lot of information, 8 weeks, there's sometimes a bonus 9th week session as well. In addition to that, you also get access to the variety of Albert's List webinars that we also host in addition to our bootcamp. So those are webinars that go for $15 to $20, sometimes more, given the type of content that we have. And you're going to get those for free because you're committed to working with us. And this is a really great deal because then, I know I've worked, I have never worked with Corey, but I know that Corey's work is high value because each of his sessions, I think, start at something like $200 each, right? They're pretty high up there. Corey's not got a lot of time. I don't got a lot of time. He also works for a really great Fortune 500 company. If you want to look it up on LinkedIn. And so we're giving you all of this because we want you to succeed in the new year. A lot of you raised your hands earlier saying that you were unhappy with your current role or that you were looking for something new. And there's a few times a year, right? Or even in your life where you get that opportunity to say yes to something that if you commit to is going to change your life. And I want to say that, for Albert's List, we're here to try and make that. I want to, spend an hour a week, hopefully not delivering you value. I want to deliver you value. We've had a couple of boot camps that we've held already. Recruiting is one of our new ones. We've had a general job search boot camp where job seekers get jobs almost right in the middle of the boot camp too. They see their opportunities increase. If you're feeling like your email or your LinkedIn's a little lonely right now, I want to make it seem like you have not enough time to take those phone calls because your profile is so optimized. I want to see your resume get all the love that it deserves because you've put things in order. I want you to send LinkedIn messages to recruiters that recruiters respond to because you've said all the right things, you've hit all the right notes, and you know how to speak the language. And I want you to walk into those interviews with all the confidence in the world. I want you to know what's at stake. I want you to be able to communicate your stories clearly. I want you to be able to understand what their problems are and speak to their problems more articulately than they understand their problems to be, so that they have no choice but to move forward to the next round. And that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what I want for you. But you know what? It's not what I want for you. It's what you want for yourself as you look to this holiday season. and into the new year, right? We all talk about our New Year's resolutions. I know I want to go to the gym starting January 1st, but am I going to really do it? I don't know. Maybe I got to hire myself a coach. Whether you want to find yourself a new job, Corey could be your coach. And so, yeah. And so, Corey, I see a couple questions here. I know we're putting together this program, and we have a couple of recruiters who are here already who are asking whether this bootcamp is helpful to those who are already in recruiting and how we can help recruiters become even more advanced in their job search. So I want to hear your thoughts on that since you're the expert here.
I do think we can help you if you are an existing recruiter or have existing recruiting experience. I probably think the weeks 1 and 2 probably would not be relevant for you because if you've done it before, you don't need to know all the terminology and things like that. But after week 3, when we get into job search tips, how to optimize your resume, LinkedIn, what types of impactful projects you need to be talking about, that's going to be really valuable for you. And as Albert mentioned, how to craft the appropriate type of networking messages. Actually, honestly, if you were a recruiter and you came to this bootcamp, I think it would be like cheating because you would be so set up for success. It would be probably be very, very easy for you to get another opportunity if you were to finish this bootcamp. And from a timing perspective, I know it's a little early, but we wanted to catch everyone before the holidays, and that way you have time to think about the opportunity, as Albert said, but also because $179 or $119 could be expensive for some folks. And if you are really interested in changing your career and changing your potential, life, we wanted to make sure that you had the time to save up and budget appropriately so that you can invest in yourself come the new year. And also from a job search perspective, most companies get their headcount grants in January. And so you would basically be running this boot camp in parallel with timing as to when more companies will be opening up more recs, more headcount to hire recruiters in 2022. And so I think the timing will also be great for you because what you don't want to do is like learn something, but then not get to apply it right away and not get to actually see the results and progress. And so if we were to do this bootcamp now towards the end of the year where there's typically less headcount available, not as many companies hiring, you may get all this great information, but then if you're not applying it anywhere, you may get a little frustrated. So we also think that starting this timing in January is going to be perfect. Okay, so there was a lot of questions.
Getting the certificate or something similar. That's actually a fantastic question that I haven't really looked into yet because I'm here to just get you that knowledge. If you would like a letter of recommendation upon conclusion of this, I'm happy to provide one for you in terms of what you've learned and how you've applied it. Absolutely. A certificate, I think, as we're launching this program, is going to be something that we have on our roadmap down the line. So that's a great idea, and definitely. I know, and then Bahare, you're asking if you could have the program sooner. Corey and I are looking through our January calendar and just, I'd love to start it sooner too, but we're in the holiday season. If there's something that you would like individually and separately, happy to work with you through it. Corey and I can answer your questions, but we're settling on the January 31st date just because we want people to really think explore what's available for them. So unfortunately not at this time from a timing perspective. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and drop the Eventbrite link into the chat here. We have, I believe we are offering a series of tickets for $119. And once that sells out, the price will go up to $149. And then we're going to have it go up to $179. And so however you decide, if you want to let me know of an IOU or something, happy to do that. We have the first 10 going for $119 and then $149. And once that sells out, we have $179. And honestly, at either price point, whether it's $14 or $16, $17 a week, it's very affordable in terms of what you're already spending in your career investments. And so I am here to answer all of your questions. And yeah, we also help with networking to find a recruiting job. Networking is one of our modules. We will spend a week on networking, how to write those networking messages, how to not sound like you're desperate and actually know what you're talking about, and Corey will walk us through that. And in addition to that, you also get access into our job search community at Albert's List. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that community right here before you even join, so you have an idea of what we're all about over there. We're a community of 46,200 job seekers, recruiters, hiring managers, and other fellow professionals who, just like you, want to succeed and are here to help you succeed. We have very strict guidelines about being compassionate and kind to each other. And so you'll also see job postings in there every day, as well as memes to help keep your job search light and humorous too. So a little bit of everything for you. You can join that today at no cost to me. I get no skin in the game off of that, but we do keep the community very moderated. We do have a Southern California community too. It's not as active, but given that we are in the midst of a pandemic where everybody has gone remote, our Northern California community has a little bit of everybody. So because we've had everybody from the Bay Area out all the way to Australia and India join our webinars during these times. And so, either way, you're going to be able to find an opportunity. Do we help with referrals? Yes, we can help with referrals. We'll get to know you. We'll get to know what it is that you want. And if I have personal contacts, I think I have over 8,000 contacts on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to help. Chris, good to have you here. I'm glad to see you. We'll see you joining us. This is great. Monica, each session is going to take between 60 and 90 minutes. And so we're going to be there to check in with you. We're going to present. We're going to answer all your questions. Each of these sessions are going to be recorded and available to you on LinkedIn. And once these sessions are over, you can go back to the LinkedIn and rewatch them over again. And so
that's only if you're part of the program.
Give you all the time you need.
Yeah, and that's only if you're part of the program. We should clarify that.
Yep.
Yeah. So the recordings will only be available to folks who are in the program. So
I'm seeing on our side that we have 2 individuals signed up already. Congratulations to both of you who have signed up. We look forward to having you here. And we're going to go ahead and run this webinar again in January if you want to rewatch it and gain an understanding of what we're here about. You know what? Look, I'm here to help you succeed. I want you to win. And so put your faith and trust in us, and I will try and do what I can with me and my network to help you get your next job. Bahare, one more question about recruiting. Is it true that the job security is low? Corey, that's your question. That's your question to answer.
I would probably have to agree. That is lower than some jobs like accounting and finance, just because those jobs are always going to be required because you have to be able to file, financial statements and things like that. So
someone's got to count the money.
Yeah. So as compared to like truly like highly job secure roles, yeah, we are lower. I mean, if you just think about how it works, right? Like if a company doesn't need to hire anymore, like at the beginning of COVID, typically recruiting functions are hit first, followed by like any non-revenue generating function also gets hit, not just HR. But those typically are the first ones to go. But some companies also have learned. That's why companies like Google, Facebook, Amazon, they retained all of their recruiters, because what companies did learn after 2008 is while you did save costs in the short run or in the short term, when the economy turns back around again, you won't be able to actually match the growth, and then you'll be behind on what the revenue targets that you could have gained or achieved if you just maintained your staffing function. So a lot of the larger companies actually retained all of their recruiters during COVID-19, and that's why now all of them have insane stock growth. If you think about like, if you've seen like how like Tesla has done so well, Nvidia, Google, Apple, right? They all retained their recruiting functions because they knew it was temporary, and when the economy did turn back around, they wanted to be able to match the growth and the potential sales, because if you don't have enough engineers, you don't have enough sales folks, you won't be able to capture as much revenue. So it's it is a bit of a trade. I think if you were to work at like a super small startup and you're the only recruiter and they lose funding, then yeah, you would probably not be as secure as like a software engineer who's building, their product or whatever. But I do think it is contextual overall. And there were other questions
Yeah, I would actually also challenge a reframe on that though, Corey, in that, every job, if you're not doing well at, is a very insecure job. However, on the other hand,
that's true.
if you go
Yep.
in, do what you're asked to do, and if you're a top producing recruiter, your people you recruit come in and they do a really great job, and you do a really great job, then there is never an excuse around whether to retain you or let you go. And so
I would agree.
recruiting is just like sales, right? You're in there to help a company grow in the way that it grows best by hiring new people or bringing new people to buy a product. And the better that you're able to do that, the more that the better that you're able to do that, the more valuable you become. And the more valuable you become, the more connected you are. And the more connected you are, the more important you'll be. And so connect the dots at every organization you're in, work your way into the organization, and you'll never have to worry.
Yeah. And I'd also say too, right? If one industry is struggling or facing financial hardship, there's typically another industry or another company that's having the opposite experience and is doing very, very well. COVID highlighted that extremely well. Technology companies did great. Biotech companies did great. Cloud companies did great. So even if you were let go, if you were a top performer, a top recruiter, you would have no problem getting hired as a recruiter at another company or another industry that is doing fine. Sorry, Monica, it took us a while to get to your question. What do you think is the most challenging or unexpected thing people experience when transitioning into recruiting? I think the most challenging thing that most people face in any job switch or career change is probably going to be the interviewing. That's always the hardest piece that people run into. You can write a well-crafted resume. We'll teach you what certain skills, keywords, etc. you need to highlight so that you can get interviews, but it's passing the interviews that is always the most challenging part, because not knowing what stories or what experiences you have that are going to really transfer over and demonstrate that you're qualified for a role, that's the biggest barrier that people run into. I think the other challenging thing is tempering and setting realistic expectations for yourself when you are making a career switch. Sometimes you need to take a hard look at yourself in the mirror and look at your experience and see, okay, what companies, what jobs am I truly qualified for that I can realistically attain in an 8-week period? And then from there, what are the career steps I need to take in order to get me to the job that I ultimately want? And we can help you do that. Angelita, how do we highlight transferable experiences on our resumes? Well, the first step to that, which is weeks 1 through 3 of the bootcamp, is actually understanding the job that you want so that you know what is a transferable experience and why it's a transferable skill set when you're applying for a new position. That's why I'm dedicating the first 3 weeks to get you up to speed with all of the recruiting lingo, all of the vocabulary, all of the day-to-day activities, so that you can look at your job, your current career, and go, wait, I have done that, but in a different way. But I just need to talk about it so that it comes across as if I have recruiting experience. And then when it comes time to interview, I now know what stories or what projects I need to talk about because it highlights my transferable experience that makes me a really good fit for this recruiting position. So how you highlight it, you have to first understand and memorize and truly know what the job is that you want. And then from there, you'll know exactly what you've done that is a good match. Sundar, what would a typical day be on the phone all the time? Oh no, would a typical day be on the phone all the time? It's a mixture. So I would say I'm on the phone. I think I think it's like 15%. I just did a time survey. I think it's about 15% of my day is spent on the phone. The rest of it is like meetings, LinkedIn. I work on projects at the same time. So I would say about 15% of my day is spent on the phone. Is there a general consensus on commission percentage? No, it varies from company to company. And if you work in-house for a corporation like Apple, Amazon, Google, whatever, you typically be paid on a salary and bonus and equity plan. You would not be on a sales plan.
Any
Uh,
other questions?
is
I know
there
we're
a
asking
is
very
there a
detailed
life
sales
and work
questions here.
balance in recruiting? I would say yes. Um, the average amount of time spent working on my team, we just did like a survey, I believe is 41 hours a week, 41 and a half hours a week. Um, and so I would say yes, significant, like my work-life balance has been significantly better. I used to work 80 to 100 hours a week. Now I would say I work 45 hours, but I choose to work more because I like my job. I would say I work between 45 and 50 hours a week, but that's because I choose to, not because I have to. I think our target is like 40-ish hours a week. So I would say, yeah, there's a lot of work-life balance, especially once you like have truly mastered what you're doing. Some people I know work less than 40 hours a week, and that's 15%, 15% I spend on the phone. Each bootcamp session will be between 60 and 90 minutes. Did I get
Each
through
boot camp
everything?
session, Christopher, as we mentioned, was is between 75 to 90 minutes. And yes, Gina, they will be recorded. They will be available on YouTube, and only those who have the link will be able to access it. And so you'll be able to see it from there. Although you are highly encouraged, and maybe even I should say strongly encouraged, to attend in person and live so that you can get all your questions answered in a timely manner. So yeah, let us know if you have any questions. Any additional questions? Yep. All right. Well, with that said, I think we're going to go ahead and conclude it now. Corey, I'm going to have it over to you for final thoughts and anything else.
Yeah, of course. I'll just answer
Actually,
this
wait, we
last
got
one.
one more thought.
If we are really engaged in the program, how much chance do we have to get a job? I mean, it depends on how much effort and time you're willing to put into it. But I think you have, I don't know what the percentage would be, but I think you have
I
a high
will say this,
likelihood
that with
getting a job.
I will say this, that with the philosophy that Albert Swift has when it comes to how we break down our job searches, your opportunities will increase exponentially. If you're getting, 2 bites a week and, 1 interview a week, I would say you can expect that to at least double or triple.
By the way, one
Um,
interview a week is very good, just for anyone's reference. If you're getting one new company interested in you a week, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
yeah,
That's more interviews than you could probably handle in a given year, right? That basically would be 52 companies that you would be interviewing
yeah,
at, right? And so that would be that's a lot of opportunities. If you're getting one interview a week, that's really good.